everyone. I'm Cindy from Education USA Hong Kong. We are co-hosting this session with Education USA Singapore. We have invited Emileigh from Ohio State University today to talk about MA and PhD in the States. So maybe I'll invite her to put up her PowerPoint now and we can see her friendly face. Hello, Emileigh. Hello.
Hi, Cindy. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Emileigh Beatty, and I am admissions counselor with Ohio State University. And I just want to welcome everyone that's joined the session today. We're very happy to talk with you today. You see behind me a picture of our campus in the summertime, and we'll be sharing some pictures of campus, but we're very happy to share a presentation with you today. So let me just pull up that PowerPoint. One moment here. Okay, I'll minimize this on the side. So thank you everyone for joining us. As I mentioned, my name is Emileigh Beatty. I've shared my contact information there if you have any questions and I can help follow up. I am going to present today on a topic shared, and then we will address questions after the presentation. But you can be putting questions in the Q&A section and also in the live chat. So feel free throughout the presentation to put your questions there, and we will try to address all of them. I work in the Office of Graduate and Professional Admissions, specifically at Ohio State, working with international recruitment. So our topic today that we're discussing is why pursue a Master of Arts or Master of Science or PhD in the US. And when thinking about this, I think it's first important to consider why continue your education, just maybe not specifically in the US, but why at all continue your education. So we're going to talk about that a moment before transitioning to what opportunities or resources specifically completing that in the US can offer you. But truly continuing your education, and our previous session, they talked about graduate studies in general and what that looks like. It is an investment in your future and potentially give you the opportunity to invest in the future of others as well as you become an expert and really hone in on your skills and in your field of study. It also allows you to set short and long-term goals. So, it was talked about typically master's degree maybe takes 2 to 3 years. In a long run, when you think about a short-term goal might be obtaining that master's over a couple of years, but the impact that will have on your future career, in your work, in the things that you will do as you go on in your life can really help you achieve long-term goals you set as well. And something when you are considering how you'll pursue those studies, think about where you will study and what you'll study. Make sure you're doing your research and finding that best fit that's going to help you achieve those goals. And help you in your efforts to continue your studies, like was talked about a little bit earlier in our session. Some other reasons may seem very practical, but just to think about today as we move into this session, specifically why we would pursue even in the US, but it's going to help you earning a master's degree, perhaps getting your PhD. It's going to help you obtain the tools you need in your field. There may be some specific licensure, a certain number of years of experience, things that you need to get in your area of study, and getting a master's degree, continuing your education can help with that. It also may just help satisfy that intellectual curiosity that you have. Maybe you are someone who really enjoys and loves to learn. I hope that we all do. I hope that we're all lifelong learners, and getting your master's degree or PhD can help you really give you that opportunity to study out certain things or continue your research efforts. It gives you, going along with that, you can enjoy the challenge of mastering your field and even contributing to a larger cause. So not just I'm getting my degree, but what am I learning that I can and help and contribute to other ideas, to other research in kind of the greater scheme of things. It is going to help you improve your skills and knowledge, of course, and it may be as practical satisfying job requirements. So maybe in order to uh, apply for a job that you're wanting to be considered for, it may require a master's degree, or you're looking for a director role, they're requiring you to have that PhD in your academic area. So it could be something as simple as I need to have that degree in order to advance in my career. It can help you in that same line of thinking, get ahead in the job market as well. Sometimes, going straight from your bachelor's, some students will choose to go right into working and beginning their career. Others may see that obtaining a master's first can maybe help put you ahead in the job market in a way. And when that's noticed, perhaps on your resume or when you're being reviewed for a position, maybe that can advance you faster in some cases. And it can also very, in a practical way, increase financial prospects. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But in a lot of cases, the more education that you have the opportunity to receive, it can increase your salary or what you'll make. And then last but not least, it's going to help you build connections. And we'll talk more about that throughout the presentation. But when you think about why continue my study, it's really it's creating networks with not just with the institution you attend, but also with those that you'll work with, maybe in internships, building connections with alumni in the institution that you attend, and truly it can end up having a global impact in those connections. So specifically, when we talk about pursuing your degree at the graduate level in the US, one of the things it can offer is an internationally recognized qualification. So that's not to say that only a degree in the US does that. We know that there are plenty other places in the world where the degree that you earn in that country would be recognized globally. But as I'm representing a US institution today, something that we would speak to is that it does offer you that ability if you're getting a master's degree, for example, in the US, that is something you can take most everywhere in the world with you that will be recognized as long as you're attending an accredited institution in the US. So it's going to increase job opportunities in that way because you can go a lot of places in the world with that degree. Of course, like we touched on, improve financial prospects. Sometimes it's not always required to have a master's or even a PhD, but those that do may have greater financial opportunities and prospects. And then again, allowing you to contribute globally because you have that study abroad experience. Maybe when you're studying in the US, English is not initially your first language, but you're getting to be in the classroom and hone in on those English speaking skills, and you're getting to work with faculty, with other students from all over the world, and build those connections globally. So that can assist you in your way in your career and academic endeavors. This is one slide I wanted to show. It's a study from a couple years ago, but still something you would see today. And if you research this, you'll see a lot of similar results, that your average earnings will kind of parallel with your educational attainment. So you see on average, someone earning a high school degree or associates or even a bachelor's, their income does improve pretty drastically as they're gaining that master's or doctoral, even professional degree. This is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, but you can look at this study in other regions and areas of the world as well. So even if you earn that degree in the US and then you take it to another country where you complete your work, typically you'll find similar findings. And then pursuing a master's or PhD in the US can also give you opportunities for financial support for your education. So if we're talking about, funding opportunities, making it worth your while, maybe you've put a lot of money into obtaining your bachelor's degree and you're thinking, I want to continue my study, but I have to be able to afford that if I'm not working and I'm going to be a full-time student in the United States. So I'm going to talk a minute about these kind of financial support and opportunities or resources available for you. Again, not to say they wouldn't be available in other countries, but most or all of our institutions in the US, both private and public, are going to offer usually one of these types, if not all of them, options for graduate students. So there may be opportunities for associateships or university fellowships, or even the academic area or department that you're applying to may have a specific scholarship or grant that you might be qualified for. To talk a moment about graduate associateships, in case you're not familiar with that, there are different kinds. Most popular are the research or teaching associateships, the RA or TA as they call them, and they are just as they sound. Research associateship is going to be an opportunity to work and do research. Typically, they try to match this to the field of study you're going into. So if you're pursuing your master's in chemistry, they're going to, and you're applying for one of these research associateships, they're going to try and tie that in with the research being done in the chemistry or in that department. Teaching, you may be helping with everything from grading papers, helping teaching an undergraduate course with a professor. So you may help in that aspect. And then there are even administrative associateships as well. And these can look like working maybe in the front office of a department, or even maybe in a different department on campus than where your study actually is. They are sometimes a little bit more rare, but these are typically the options that you'll see with the associateships at universities or colleges in the US. Just to explain a little bit what an associateship is, it's usually work that you would do usually about 20 hours a week in exchange for a tuition waiver. And then typically there's some health coverage involved in that as well, and a monthly stipend. So it doesn't always cover all of the cost, but it can really help you on your way. And then university fellowships, when we talk about these are types of graduate scholarships, basically. So if you're applying to a master's or a PhD, this would be an award that you receive. I don't want to say they're more prestigious than an associateship, but typically a fellowship being like a true scholarship, you don't have to necessarily work for it like you do the associateship. So these are typically include a tuition waiver and health insurance coverage as well, or at least partially. But this is where you're nominated by your program. In addition to admitting you, they want to offer you funding, and it may even fully fund your education. So like Ohio State, for example, does have some programs where when you apply, they're reviewing students, and if they admit you and give you a fellowship, they are going to fully fund your study. That's not the case with every program or every graduate program you would apply to at a US institution. It really depends on the school. It depends on the funding available within that academic area that year, but it's something to consider and think about as you pursue your studies, the funding opportunities that are available to you in the US. And then pursuing a master's or a PhD in the US. And we've touched on this earlier, but it can truly provide you with global connections and resources that you may not otherwise be able to make if you stay where you are. That's not saying, hard that you would only be able to make those connections, but we're just talking about what would be available to you. So if you're looking at it like this, it's a study abroad experience. Maybe you're going to the US for the very first time, or maybe you're returning, but this time to pursue a master's or PhD at a different level, maybe a different institution or a different part of the US, can be a totally different experience. And with that, all of the learning that you'll have just in day-to-day living with being somewhere new, somewhere different. So that in itself will help you to gather resources and knowledge in addition to what you're learning, in the field, in the classroom, in your research that you would continue. You're going to be able to connect with students and faculty from around the world. So most institutions that you're going to go to, uh, you'll see faculty, you'll see other students coming from all around the world, all different countries. And so these experiences are all being kind of merging and being shared. And it just allows for a lot of opportunities for all students involved. You become a part of a global alumni community in that way. So when I'm thinking about Ohio State, we sort of have this thing where for Ohio, we're in the state of Ohio, we'll go OH. And then, when we've traveled and recruited in different parts of the world, there'll be some alumni perhaps present that will go IO in response. But a lot of institutions could tell you, a lot of US institutions could tell you this type of story as well, that where they've traveled to, that alumni that were international students at their institution or were uh, grew up in the US, but then are now working abroad, that they've been able to make connections with alumni wherever they've traveled. So it is great that you become an alumni of a institution, and that will connect you with others from all over the world. And then the research opportunities as well. Depending on where the institution or college or university you attend, but a lot of them are connected to research centers, or in their communities it may be connected to businesses. You can complete internships and connect with businesses this way. So whether you're conducting research, whether you're trying to continue your study in business or education, you'll get these hands-on experiences, as long as you're looking for them, actively going after them as well, but just continuing to build those connections. And then again, you'll be able to contribute to global causes. So I'm thinking right now about how crazy 2020 has been, and a lot of research being done. Um, Students can be a part of that. Just the work that's being done, research around the world. And part of that is you pursue your graduate degree. It connects you more with others and more with opportunities. So just kind of an overview to kind of tie this together, what we've been talking about. When you are asking the question, why should I continue my master's or my PhD in the US? It is a internationally recognized qualification that can really assist you in your efforts. It can improve job prospects and increase those salary opportunities. It gives you opportunities for work abroad as well. So there are many times, not in every case, but there are many times where students are able to be offered a job opportunity through an internship or something they complete, and build that connection. So while some students will return to their home country, or maybe they'll go elsewhere in the world to continue their career, some students will remain in the States and be able to work abroad. Again, contributing to those global causes and research efforts. I am thinking specifically with Ohio State, but again, a lot of US institutions could share with you. We have a lot of faculty, in our physics department, for one example. They're going to research centers around the world, usually traveling pretty often, the faculty and even the students in their research area, and working with others to conduct and make discoveries. It's a short time commitment when you think about it, but it can have truly a lifelong impact. It can affect your career and how quickly you move maybe up the ladder, and how quickly you may transition to roles, because it's not just something you're adding to your resume, but it's giving you the skills and knowledge that you need to be effective in your field. And then that connection to faculty and professionals from all over the world is going to really be helpful as well as you pursue your studies and career. And just some things to consider as well when you're talking about why you want to consider your education, continuing your education. And the next session will go more into talking about the admissions process, but just some things to be considering while you're asking that question: why should I pursue a master's? Why should I get my PhD? Be looking at the universities in the US, if that's where you're considering your study. Do they offer the specialization? So, as mentioned in our previous session, about sometimes we're looking at rankings of institutions, and we're looking where they lie. Are they in the top 10 or top 50 schools in the US? But it's important to make sure that what you want to pursue, that university offers, maybe even a specific specialization that is of interest to you, something you're passionate about and want to pursue. Make sure they're offering that. Perhaps it's a research area. You want to really check the programs, the academic area's websites, and see what type of research or work that they're doing, what they're offering, to make sure it matches and align with your interest. Is your specialization offered in more than one program? So that might give you the opportunity to consider more broadly other programs as well that you may not have even known you had an interest in, or connected with what you were looking at in your field. So something to look at as well. And then what faculty members are involved in your area of specialization. I always, after talking with students that are interested in graduate school, we go through the admissions process, talk about things like this, but then I always encourage them to check out that academic areas website specifically, and even email and connect with the faculty, or reach out to the program coordinator, because they may be able to share more details or information, which of course they will be, to help you know if that is a good fit for you. It will also, you can introduce yourself and make that connection even before you start the application process. And then it's also important, just very practical, but to know what is the departmental or the program's admission criteria. So are they going to require the GRE? What type of English proficiency tests will they accept? What are they looking for? Are they asking for a statement of purpose or something like that? Because with graduate study, it's more than when you applied for your bachelor's degree. It's not just usually transcripts and then your English score, but they're going to be asking for letters of reference, statement of purpose. They may ask for a portfolio or something like that, depending on what you're applying to, or an interview. So there are definitely more pieces to that application process, which I'm sure they'll be talking about in the next session. But these are just some things as you begin to ask the question, why pursue my a graduate degree, things to consider as well, and some questions to be asking and thinking about. And so now we'll transition here in a minute to questions. I did just want to share our email for graduate professional admissions and my email as well. Again, if you had questions specific, perhaps to Ohio State, but also I'm happy and often answer questions just students may have about study in the states in general. Also our phone and our website information is there. So I'll stop sharing now to go to the questions. So I'm going to go here, make sure I'm looking in the right place.
Thank you, Emileigh, so far. I have a question.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
We have many Hong Kong students asking about the difference between MA and Master of Science and Master of Arts.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain that a little when they
Yes.
apply? Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I can kind of explain in a general way, but Master of Science it's kind of what it's sounding like, Master of Arts or Master of Science. So this is Master of Arts degree is going to be thinking more about things in the arts. So Master of Arts maybe in English or something like this, Master of Arts in music, and then Master of Science more in like chemistry, biology, things like this. Now you will see even in some of the fields, they'll give both options. So you should read specifically what it's saying about each of those programs. But I'm thinking about education. They even have a Master's in Education. They'll have a Master's of Science in Education or a Master of Arts. So it's typically connected more to what you want to pursue as well. So some are, your science tends to be more focused on the technical pieces of things and how they work and relate, where the arts might be a more general way of study in that field. And then with my example of Master of Education, that's going to be very specific to that field, of course. So if you're wanting to be like a principal of a school or something like that, it might be better for you to pursue like a Master's of Education in education instead of that Master of Arts or something like that. That's a very general kind of way to describe it, and probably not the best description, but definitely just to give you kind of an idea of what that looks like. I'm reading here too a question: what is the difference between graduate school and professional programs? Um, so I believe that they're going to be addressing that tomorrow in day 4. Their theme, they'll be talking about that. But just to briefly answer that question, graduate school is what we've been talking about today, where when you're pursuing a master's degree or a PhD specifically, that is going to what they say graduate school. And then if you're looking at professional programs, this has more to do with programs that may require a very specific track in certain licensure. I'm thinking like our professional programs include like nursing, public health, dental hygiene, things like this, where they may even require very specific prerequisites, where if I'm applying to a master's in biology, I might have my undergraduate or bachelor's degree in a completely different field, but as long as I have the equivalence of a U.S. bachelor's degree, most U.S. institutions, of course, will consider me for their master's program. When you're talking about applying to a professional program, that's going to have more to do with, if you're applying to nursing, say, you're going to have certain classes that, you know, they're looking for the anatomy, biology, these certain things that have to be there because you have a very specific area that you're studying, field that you're going to be in, and you have to have that experience. So. But you should be on tomorrow's call for more information about professional programs. There's another question. Someone is about to submit their application. What do we look for in the statement of purpose? Excellent question. A lot of U.S. institutions at the graduate, when we're considering you for graduate school, we're closely looking at that statement of purpose because it is really a part of telling the picture of giving us a picture of you as a student. So we're looking at your letters of reference. We're looking, of course, at transcripts and grade point average, but your statement of purpose allows you to share just what we've been talking about. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve by continuing your education? And, you know, how is specifically attending that school, wherever you're considering in the US, why studying there? How is that going to help you achieve those goals? So those are some very important questions to answer in that statement of purpose. One thing, just a tip, you want to make sure you're not just kind of putting everything that was in your CV or resume in the statement of purpose, because usually they'll also ask for CV or resume, or they're seeing a lot of information they've gathered on the application. So that statement of purpose is really a moment for you to share your experiences that are related to that program and what sets you apart, what makes you a strong candidate in your goals for continuing your graduate study. We have another question. Here, I just want to make sure. Will COVID-19 significantly impact the job employment at the moment? Um, I don't know that I could actually speak to that. I'm not aware that it has impacted job employment as far as international students um, that are studying on the campus and then maybe completing OPT or things like this. Um, I'm not I'm not in a position where I've done enough research, I feel like, to answer that correctly. So maybe if someone else is, they could assist you with that question, or we could get your information, get back to you later with more information. We have another question here. Do some universities in the US provide scholarship program or fellowship programs for international students? So absolutely. Ohio State is one of them, but there are many, many U.S. institutions, colleges, both private and public, that will provide scholarships. Like we talked about, they're usually called fellowships at the graduate level, as you mentioned, but they are available for any students that are applying, and certainly for international students as well. They tend to be competitive, these types of scholarships, because you have to think just as competitive as it might have been for you getting your bachelor's degree and being considered for a scholarship. Now this is a higher level of study, and so the stakes might be a little higher as well. So they want to look for those students with strong grades, strong statement of purpose, really good references, letters of reference that are written on their behalf. So just some things to consider. And someone also asked, is there a difference between the statement of purpose and personal statement? There's usually not. These are usually used interchangeably. Even not just with different schools, but even within the same school. We have over 200 graduate professional programs, and depending on the program, they may call it something different. But basically, that personal statement or statement of purpose is where you're sharing your personal goals, personal and professional goals, and what research you've done, what publications you've done, and how you want to contribute to the program, and how it will help you in your goals, your academic goals. Just making sure I didn't miss any questions. We have some in the Q&A as well. So let me pull this up here. Is there a GPA requirement for the graduate scholarship or fellowship? And can it be cut off in the middle of our study if we do not meet the requirement? So great question. Yes, typically there are grade requirements, GPA requirements for graduate fellowships. As I had mentioned, they're typically pretty competitive in the sense that, you know, it's funding, and sometimes if they're fully funding a graduate student, you know, that is money, free money that they're giving out, so they want to give it to students that they feel will be the best fit for their program, will really be able to benefit from their program, but also give back and help that academic area as well. um, so in most cases, there's always going to be a certain type of GPA, at least a base GPA requirement. The exception might be if the fellowship or scholarship is fully maybe based on need or another area. But even at that, they are going to want you to meet certain qualifications, of course, just for general admission. So just to answer that. And then can it be cut off in the middle of study? Again, with most, you know, I'm talking on behalf of other US institutions, but I've worked at small private universities and now larger state institutions, and all of them usually have some kind of way to make sure that the students with those scholarships are achieving a grade point average or doing well. Um, and it can potentially be taken away if certain requirements, maybe with a GPA, are not met. But generally, there's a lot of resources available for students if they're having if they're struggling some academically, and usually there's some warnings before that would happen. Regarding or pursuing graduate studies, can I apply for a PhD over a master's degree if I don't have a master's degree? Great question, something I meant to touch on. If it does depend on the program. So for example, in the United States, typically to practice psychology, you need to have a bachelor's degree to be a PhD to be a practicing psychologist. So they do, like at Ohio State, but I know a lot of US institutions are this way. They do not even offer a master's in psychology, just the PhD. And there are other fields like this as well, where the nature of it is that it would benefit a student more to have a PhD. So you may be able to apply as you're completing your bachelor's, or as long as your bachelor's will be complete before you begin that PhD study. So just look at the requirements and see. They will usually clearly indicate if you have to have a master's to apply to the PhD. Okay, and then we have another question. A second-year student majoring in law in Japan, and they're interested in a master's degree. Um, they they think they will be able to have a wider range of or learning if they go into the LLM program. So is it possible to study something related to law or master's degree in the US? And absolutely. So Ohio State is one of those institutions, but many of them have a law degree or may offer a law degree. So it's I know EducationUSA has a lot of resources available for you, so you can even look uh, and search even online by programs and see which institutions in the US offer law programs. Sorry, I want to make sure I get through these questions here, but also watch my time. So we do have another question about job opportunities in the US after graduating from a US institution, you know, in light of the pandemic. So I can't speak to the numbers of that right now. But I will say, I think at large, you know, with employment in the US, it's not just international students that may be impacted by that. It would be anyone working in the US. But again, I can't really speak to that. I don't have the research or all the information on that. But again, typically when you're given something to note, I should say, when you're given a visa to come and study in the US, it's with the understanding that typically you're going to go there for study and then return. Um, so that's something to think about too, is if you don't get that opportunity to begin work in the United States right after your studies, it is still that experience and that degree that can take you other places in the world to pursue your career, or if it doesn't open up right away, returning in the future to the US to work as well. And another question, when do you recommend applicants send emails to potential advisors so they can introduce themselves and express their interest in the program? I think that's appropriate really at any time, but it can be as early as if maybe you're in your last year of your bachelor's study and you know that you want to be pursuing your master's degree next fall. It's not too late to begin that connection, um, and reach out to advisors or potential researchers you might work with. So I would say do that early and definitely before you apply, because a lot of times you're going to apply, you're going to pay an application fee, and you don't want to apply to a U.S. institution that ends up, it wasn't a good fit, and you realize that after already starting the application process. So I recommend before you even apply, um, making that connection, putting those feelers out there with the program. What is the deadline of most universities' PhD applications? That will vary greatly depending on the institution and the academic area. But to give you sort of an idea, most institutions are beginning, they've already opened their application for autumn 2021, so next fall. Um, and a lot of them are already reviewing applications. Some deadlines are happening as early as the end of this month or early December for next autumn term in 2021. So you will find with graduate study, whether you're pursuing a master's or PhD, it's a good idea to really look ahead and be even planning even a year out or more for your study, because a lot of times you have to begin that application process very early. Where maybe for your bachelor's in the United States, you still want to start early enough, but you usually have a little bit more time. Master's is a longer application piece, which they'll talk about in the next session, because there's more components to it and to complete the application. So be sure to check out universities' deadlines, their application deadlines for your specific program, and to be aware of those. So let me go back to the chat here to make sure I'm answering the questions. We have some more. I'm applying in the next year or two, but a lot of courses are online and I'm worried about getting a recommendation. Do you have any tips on how to build a relationship with professors, given that I've never met some of them? That is a great question, and certainly something unique that we're facing in this time. Um, my tip would be to be in regular contact with that professor, even though you may not be meeting face to face. Is there an opportunity for you, maybe through Zoom or Skype, to at least once or twice through the semester um, meet with them, and get to meet each other screen to screen, face to face? Have questions that you can ask. Maybe you know a lot of the answers to the work or the class that you're taking, but see if there's questions that you can ask of your professor, even emailing them, to let them know you're a conscientious student, you're an active participant. When you're in your online courses, being active, if they're asking for questions, being someone that's asking questions in the chat or raising your hand to ask those questions. So I recommend both of those, making that effort to stay connected to your professor, meeting with them at least once or twice, if you can, virtually through the semester, and then also being a good student and active participant in your online course and online meetings. There's another question here. Are there some research centers that give research funding, such as the Royal Society in UK? I'm not specifically familiar with the Royal Society in the UK, but I do know there are research centers um, that provide research funding. Um, to give an example, with our physics program here at Ohio State, students that we will work with or may admit, they can receive maybe a fellowship. They qualify for that, and they will be funded the first couple years. Perhaps they get that fellowship for the first couple of years as they're gaining their PhD. But then they make that connection with a faculty member in their research area, and that is, they get that funding from that research area to complete their PhD. So there are these types of areas on campus that may be receiving funding for the research that they're doing, and that can be even put towards the students that will be helping conduct that research. We have another question coming in. If a student has done their PhD but is interested in a career change to a different field, can they apply for a second master's degree or PhD in a different field? Absolutely. We often get students applying that may already have a couple of degrees, but again, like we talked about, they're lifelong learners. As they gain more knowledge and skills, they're seeing where they have a variety of interests as well, or where some of their academic areas kind of overlap with um, other ideas and things that they want to pursue. So absolutely, that is something that is done. One thing I would say is to have a clearly indicate maybe your reason for that change in your statement of purpose. That's another good way to kind of promote why you would be a good fit for that program. You can talk about, this is the experience I've gained, and it's helped me understand that this is what I want to pursue and do. So that's definitely something you may need to address in your statement of purpose so that it's clear why the change from one field to another. Right, I just want to make sure I'm answering all the questions here.
I think you have
Okay.
efficiently.
Okay, great. Great.
So Emileigh's contact is can be found on our event page as well. You can still ask her even more questions after this
Yes,
session if you think of
please.
any. Or
I'll put
otherwise,
it
you
in
can
the chat as well, Cindy.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Or you can also contact your Education USA advisor. Um, the state is surely a good destination for graduate programs. I know many local students, they really want to pursue a second degree, especially if they have taken it the first degree locally. The States is definitely a very good destination. Like Emily has said, there are many choices, and like even for the same program, there's like Master of Arts, Master of Science, or if you want to go like even further to PhD, do study the program carefully before you apply, or ask us anytime. So thank you, Emily, today.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
so
everyone.
goodbye.